Hello and welcome back to the Legends of Tomorrow After Show right here on thestream.tv. I'm your host, Jamie Philbrook, and we've got a great show for you tonight. Very excited to talk about tonight's episode. Before we begin, I want to remind you that you can comment with us. Please, you can tweet to us on Twitter, please, using hashtag LegendsAS, and also on our YouTube page. As you're watching this, you can comment in the comments section. We'd love to hear from you. Any thoughts or theories you have about this episode, we'd love to discuss it here on the show. But let me introduce you to my Wave Rider crew tonight. On my left, Patrick Campbell.
Hey guys, it's good to be back. You know, just like Rip, he came back last week,
Rip
and now I'm back.
Are you evil? Are you evil?
I'm not. I'm not
good.
evil. I promise.
Good. And on my right, Alvin Rueda.
What's going on, man? Interesting episode. Can't wait to talk about it. Glad to have you back, and thank you so much. It's gonna be freaking awesome. Let's do this.
It's gonna be awesome. Let's get into this. Let's dive right in. So tonight's episode, Legends of Tomorrow, Season 2, Episode 14, called Moonshot, tonight's episode, and sort of starts where we left off last week. We're looking for the final piece of the Spear of Destiny. We find out that Rip sent Henry, Commander Steele, to 1965 to New York, and he hid the spear in a place that he wouldn't even tell Rip. Rip doesn't even know where it is. The team soon figures out that Henry ingratiated himself to the 1960s, joined NASA, and in 1970 is in Houston working on Apollo 13, which is just launched. So the team quickly realizes that Henry has hidden the spear on the moon. Pretty safe place if you're going to hide the spear from the Legion of Doom.
Place.
Hide it on the moon. And our team goes in 1970 to NASA to get Henry and to find this last piece of the spear. Patrick, what did you think?
I loved this. I thought it was a lot of fun. The one thing we've talked about all season, I've been enjoying that they're going in time and really playing with what Legends can really do. All these different events and things that we know in history. George Lucas, it didn't matter what it was, and now playing with it. This Apollo 13 idea was perfect, and I loved the play on the Martian because it was like a big love letter to the Martian at the same time, which was a lot of fun.
The overall theme of the episode. Yeah, it was in a lot of ways. And actually, it's kind of funny because at one point, Ray actually mentions the Martian, kind of gives that reference in the episode. What did you think, Alvin?
Oh, I love the episode. I thought it was genius, putting that last piece of the spear right in the flag. And I definitely loved, like you were saying, that little play on in the Martian movie. And I was just waiting for them to like grow some potatoes. I wanted, I wanted Adam to grow potatoes.
Full Damon. Yeah. You wanted Ray to go full Damon.
Yeah, that would have been fun to watch. But you know, we didn't have time for that. But I'll take it though. I'll take it definitely for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely a fun episode.
You have to remember we're a 40-minute show. That's a 2.5-hour movie. We don't
We don't have the time to get into all that. Yeah. No,
Good
I
point.
thought it was a really good episode and a really great premise. Like you said, like we've been leading up to like where is the last piece of the spear and seeing it on the moon and really getting the opportunity to kind of reinvestigate. I mean, we all know Apollo 13, whether we were alive then or not. We've seen the movie, we know about Tom Hanks, we know this film, and so it was interesting to see them sort of take what we know about that and twist it a little bit. What we find when the gang first gets to NASA is that Apollo 13's gone fine. There's no Houston, we have a problem. So I thought that was an interesting thing to start to play with. And then, of course, what ends up happening is the problem, right? That's sort of what ends up happening in the episode.
Well, you know, we have to expect something's wrong if they're there at that time in 1973. So for them to find out, oh, and Thawne is now on the ship. Right. And he's pretending to be one of these astronauts. And now he's trying to take over the ship. And he wants the spear, because of course he does. He wants to live.
Right, Thawne uses his cool sort of face-changing device that we've seen him use on The Flash. Changes his face to look like one of the Apollo 13 NASA guys. And so that was actually a pretty cool scene where he kind of changes back and then puts a little, knocks the two guys out he can do what he's got to do.
It was dope. He morphed back into himself, knocking those guys out. At first I thought that they actually stabbed them with a knife, but it looks like it was more like
It looked like that.
It looked like a knife, but it was more like a syringe thing, right?
Tranquilizer kind of thing.
It's a futuristic, 23rd century,
But the Legion of Doom was, that was a pretty genius moment in their part, putting Thawne on that ship. Because one, he's the scientist, and two, anything goes wrong, he knows where to go.
Well, I don't know how much that was the decision of the Legion of Dooms as much as that was Thawne's
Probably
decision
Thawne, yeah.
to place Thawne in that position,
for sure.
right?
Oh, yeah.
Because Merlin, what's Merlin gonna do in that ship, right?
Well, I know they're all kind of like, fighting with each other
Right.
sort of to take charge of the team. We've
yeah.
seen this happen
Yeah.
the last couple episodes. But I think sort of default, we
Right.
can all agree, Thawne is sort of the leader of the Legion of Doom.
Well, and
Yeah.
he's the one that makes the most sense to be on the ship because he is the scientist
Right.
compared to
Right,
the others.
yeah.
So if anything goes wrong on the spaceship, as we see in the episode, that's exactly what happens. So it's a good thing he was the one because if it was Malcolm, what's he gonna do?
He wouldn't know what to do. Damien
Yeah.
Dark wouldn't
Right.
know what
Yeah,
to
exactly.
do.
Right.
What's he gonna act tough in front of the astronauts and beat them up? Like
Right. There's
Yeah.
nowhere to go. Yeah, you're in that capsule. Well, no,
Yeah.
you bring up a good point, and this actually leads us to our next point, is that actually Ray uses his Atom suit to sneak into the capsule, into the Apollo 13 with Thawne and the rest of the astronauts. So he's there. And Thawne sees him pretty quickly. Now, I thought he was like micro size, but he was more like action figure size, like floating right in front, which
Yeah.
probably wasn't the best.
Like medium-sized G.I. Joes.
Yeah, if
from
you're
back in the day.
hiding, you don't want
Yeah.
to sort of be floating in front of the
Yeah.
guy, but he is. And then I just love this line that Thawne says, which is, "Newsflash, Raymond, I don't need super speed to kick your ass." So we get a fight right at the beginning on the ship between Ray and Thawne. Which
It's in 0G, which is even better.
So
Like,
we should say because Thawne can't use his speed.
yeah, so for them, you're now depowering Thawne, which is actually very important for this kind of fight because you don't want Thawne to be overpowerful over Raymond because no matter how good his suit is, Thawne is always going to be faster. Right. So to kind of bring him down to Raymond's level, it was a really cool fight, and it was a lot of fun to watch them kind of going toe-to-toe in space.
Right, and that's really, you mentioned something interesting because that's a hard thing to do when you have a character as powerful as the Reverse Flash on your television show, because then it makes it really hard to get into situations where he can't just win all the time. And so I thought doing the zero gravity, and then some stuff we'll talk about later back on the Wave Rider that happens, where I think the writers did a good job of sort of neutralizing his powers so a scene could actually happen. So he's not just racing off to the next thing. What did you think about Reverse Flash?
Oh, amazing. Neutralizing is the magic word for
Yeah.
that because it definitely put them in their place, both of them. I mean, think about it. Battle of the scientists, right? Genius versus genius. And then no holds bar inside that ship. And what better way to fight than Thawne and Ray? These guys are the most intelligent ones out of the bunch. I mean, aside from Stein. Of course. But that was definitely. But he's younger, and he's more agile, more physical. He can go on physically. He can fight.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it made sense for them to fight. It made sense for both of them to be on that ship, and I totally like that. I like that they finally put both of them together on an all-out fight because I thought it made sense. So.
Yeah, I actually had forgotten that Eobard was a scientist from the 25th century or whatever it is. So it was kind of nice to shed a light on that a little bit more in this. And you're right. I mean, Ray's a character now that's been in the Arrowverse one way or the other for about 3 years at least.
Yeah.
So I think he came in season 3, beginning of season 3 of Arrow, I want to say.
Season 3, yeah.
So
I think
so he's been a part of this world for a while and knows all the workings. And honestly, the same can be said for Reverse Flash. I mean, technically, he was Wells at the beginning of the series of Flash, so he's been in the Arrowverse for quite some time. So to actually get to see these two characters who have so much sort of shared history together really be pitted against each other was interesting.
Yeah, I liked that a lot, and I actually kind of liked there was this very odd couple-like dynamic between them, especially towards the end of the episode, which was really fun because there becomes a moment where Ray has to trust Thawne to survive because Thawne is going to want to survive. He doesn't want to die on the moon. And that was one of my favorite lines is Ray's doing the Martian thing where he's talking into the camera, recording himself.
That was really funny.
And that was really funny. And you hear Thawne in the background, I'm not dying on the moon, and I'm definitely not dying with you. And I liked that. And the kind of bond that they actually end up sharing as scientists was really cool. And I liked that a lot. And I thought it was much needed for Thawne as much as it was for Rey, because we've known Rey as a character for a while, but we
Right.
haven't really known Thawne since season 1 of Flash.
And we haven't, and with the fact that other actors were playing Thawne at different points for different reasons that all of us who watch these shows know, I think it also gave that actor a little bit more of a chance, and us as an audience, to see him more as the real Thawne. So I thought that was really cool. What did you think?
Well, I agree with you. That photo bomb of Thawne was hilarious.
Yeah.
I was cracking up right there. It totally took me out of that element of watching Legends. I'm just like, all right, Thawne could be funny. That's cool.
Yeah.
He could be hilarious. But I did like that. That's probably one of my more favorite Adam episodes.
Yeah.
Out of the whole season, for sure. And that was great. And just the fact that Thawne, you know, trying to get Rey to convince him that he does know more things than him. He's in the 22nd century of all these scientific goods, where Rey is in our world, basically. That's what he knows. And Thawne has known way more than he does. The gadgets that he played around with is a lot more advanced at what the Legends were dealing with in their time period. So
Absolutely.
it made sense to me on what was going on right there.
Yeah, no, and we should also say that actually something happens in the ship. They're on the moon and they can't get off. So Rey actually needs to work with Thawne. They need each other, because if they don't, they're both going to die there. So that gives them a reason to work together.
Yeah, and there was this really interesting part of their conversation too. I don't know if you guys caught it, where Thawne was kind of telling Rey, like, you think you know about me and like the things that I want, but we're more alike than you might think, and history will prove right.
Almost hinting like you don't know the full story,
Yeah.
and wait till you do. That's very interesting. And also kind of, I mean, look, we know Damien and we know Malcolm, and they really are evil people. Like, the things that Malcolm has done to his daughter alone. This is not a
He's
good,
not a good guy.
These are not good guys. But wouldn't it be interesting, because we just think at this point that Reverse Flash is just an evil character. But what if there is some reason to his...
And that's kind of what I was wondering. I thought that was a really interesting setup, because
That's
of all
an
people to
interesting
come clean to Rey, because Rey would be very understanding as the scientist.
Right.
So-
Or just being Rey in general.
Yeah.
Rey is very outgoing
But
kind of person.
at that
so.
point, they'd been bonding so much. So
Yeah.
for him to come that way to
come
him
that clean.
was very interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what happens when you're in a small place and you're by yourselves and you think death is upon you, right?
Right.
So, but Thawne had a very good point. We never really seen Thawne or hear him say, or the explanation why he's really going after the spear. But it's kind of nice that he's hinting towards that now, because I really want to know why he is after it. and
Right,
what
it
his
sort of
motive is.
hinted that, I mean, he kind of hints at the fact that, you know, because he's a time wraith, essentially, at this
Right.
point, that it's so that he can save himself and save his
Right.
future, or stop the future that ends up happening. So, but it would be interesting to see where that goes if it's not exactly what we think.
And throughout the season, Thawne is really the real person who has a true quest, aside from the Legends trying to stop Legion of getting that spear. But the real quest is really getting all these spears together, and the person that brought that all out of everyone is Thawne.
Certainly.
So-
yeah,
okay.
absolutely. I mean, that was the master plan to get
Yeah.
all these pieces together.
It's his adventure.
Yeah, it's totally
is.
his adventure.
Totally.
Well, and we should also say that there's actually a really cool segment. The Legends do get back the final piece of the spear. It was hidden inside the flagpole, the American flag that rests on the moon, on the face of the moon. And I mean, I gotta say, this was pretty cool watching Rey geek out at the fact that he's walking on the moon.
This was one of my favorite scenes in the
It
whole
was fun.
episode. It was fun because you could tell Rey was just loving the fact that he's on the moon, because this is something he could have only dreamed of as a kid, you know?
Yeah.
It's the same thing with Camelot, going back to the Camelot stories from
Right.
before. So this was a really cool progression for him. I liked that a lot. And actually hiding the spear on the moon inside the flagpole is brilliant, because as we saw, Thawne can't use his powers up there. No one's even going to think about it. So I
Right.
thought that was really brilliant.
And who can get there? Obviously, the Wave Rider can get there, so our gang kind of goes and uses the ship to get to the moon. But you're right, like, that's why Thawne has to go on Apollo 13.
Oh, yeah,
Because that's the
absolutely.
only way he can get up there. What'd you think about walking on the moon?
Oh, it was awesome. You can see him skip very slowly in slow-mo with the classical music. Actually, I think of that as Ric Flair's music, because it's basically what
Yeah.
it is to me. But It's awesome to see Ray, in that sense, still keeping it real, but at the same time, his confidence level went so up. It went so high. He's in the next level of Adam now, but still inside, he still keeps it. He still keeps his nerdy and geeky self and loving all these different time periods that he just takes it in, and he loves his experience. I feel like out of all of them, he's the one having the greatest time out of going to different time events.
Yeah, I mean, I would add Nate to that.
Yeah.
Nathaniel this
But he's
season
so
as well. But
serious,
you're
though.
right.
Yeah. Nate's so serious
Yeah,
usually.
he's serious. But
Yeah.
I think they both have had some fun with each other on some of these
right.
adventures. And I think we could also take this opportunity to just say how great Brandon Routh is. And this is a very tricky character to play because there is so much coming from the comics. The fact that elephant in the room. This was Superman at one point, and really finding Ray's geekiness and cheesiness in a sense, but also his heroicness and his coolness, and that's a fine line to walk. And I think we're finally starting to get there.
Well, and that's what I was actually going to say when you brought up Brandon Routh. Is we have to remember this was a guy who was going to be a big movie star. He was on the cusp of it. He was Superman. And so that was such a big kind of blow for him to not get to see it get farther, but to see him really shine as Adam between Arrow and Flash and now Legends.
A difficult role.
In a really difficult role.
It really is.
Because it could have easily been seen as like an Iron Man light because of the suit and things like that. And he's crushed it since season one.
And found a really nice dynamic last season, obviously, with Dominic Purcell, kind of finding that relationship there. This season with Nick Zano plays Nate, that relationship kind of coming together. So they've really had an opportunity for the character to grow, and I think come closer to the Ray Palmer I know from the comics. I don't think the Ray Palmer from the comics has necessarily been the character I've been watching on the show, but I think we're starting to get a little bit more in that direction.
And there's actually Paul Henderson. Yeah, he said he likes Ray's evolution through the series, and I totally agree with him, especially this season. It has been amazing. Paul, thank you for watching, by the way.
Paul, right on with the comments, right in the conversation here as well. Although I'm going to shift the conversation a little bit. We did mention Nate. So there's a lot of, we know this relationship that's kind of been budding between Nate and Amaya. We know it's going to come to a head. And last week, Ray told Nate all the information that he needed to know about her future and the Vixen that we know in present day. And this episode was actually a chance for sort of a reversal of that. Once they get Henry back, basically now that Henry's mission to guard the spear is over, Nate wants to return him to his father Hank so that his father can grow up with a father, and then maybe his family life will be a little bit different. But Amaya says, no. He can't go back because you won't be the Nate that I've fallen in love with if we change this history. And then that also obviously ties into where we're going to go with her own decisions, Amaya's own decisions to go back or not go back when we get to the end of the overall mission. So I'll start with you over here, Alvin. What do you think about fighting the future and knowing too much about your destiny?
All I can say is, come on, Nate, you're a big movie buff. Haven't you watched the trilogy of Back to the Future?
The greatest trilogy of all time.
Agreed, definitely.
I'll take a pass on that one, boys, but I don't want any angry emails or comments just because I don't love all the Back to the Future movies.
Angry comments.
Angry comments. I love the first
the angry comment right now.
Let's just say the first Back to the Future is a classic. I can agree. Everyone at this table can agree on that.
Yes.
Let's move on.
But my point is, you don't mess with the timeline.
Right.
Listen to Doc. He was right. Listen to the almanac.
But let me just argue that point for a second. Haven't we already changed everything? I mean, just the fact that they came on the Wave Rider alone changes everything.
That definitely changed a lot of things, and plus Rip sending him back to the 70s, or sending him to the 70s,
future,
rather. The futures changed everything. So there's a lot of aberrations over there, which kind of gets confusing a little bit. A lot of different timelines are happening. I mean, we learned from Flash, we've learned from Legends that a lot of things really changed drastically. Even Stein having a daughter. I mean, that's a big deal.
And it becomes a point, too, where you have to wonder. I mean, I know Stein in the Invasion episode took credit for that aberration in a sense, but I know if a lot of us were thinking when we were watching, like, oh, is that because of Flashpoint? I mean, there's so many time things, and Eobard's traveled so much, and everyone's traveled. There's so many different time things. I guess the question I'll pose to you is this anything worth Amaya and Nathaniel arguing over, since just stepping on the ship has changed time, if that's the point.
No, I don't think it's worth arguing about at all. I think they all know what time travel does. I mean, these are the same people who have been living in the Flash's world. I mean, we've seen what time travel already does. As Wave Rider crew, they know what time travel does.
Right.
And yes, I mean, obviously Nate knows what it is, and I understand for him wanting that connection with his father, because it's clear that there was damage there when they were growing up. And so for him, yes, maybe it's selfish, but I understand where he's coming from, and you can't really blame him.
No, I mean, look, my father passed 4 years ago. If I had the chance to bring him back or go to the future or go to the past or do anything to bring him back, of course I would. So I think you can totally relate to where Nathaniel's coming from and the way he feels about this. And the same with his feelings towards Amaya returning or not returning. I mean, I think this episode really, and what happened with Henry, sort of solidifies in his mind why it's important that Amaya has to return.
Oh,
he now knows that Amaya has to return. And I think she's starting to figure that out too. And I thought it was really cool where she actually asks Gideon to show her her future. And Gideon says, I don't advise that. Override. And she shows her on the computer her future. And we got to see Vixen, our Vixen, Mari McCabe. What did you think about that?
Well, there was a lot of emotions going around with Amaya seeing her future. And definitely, she shouldn't have asked to begin with, and Gideon shouldn't have given it to her.
That's a good point, too.
Gideon, stop it.
It's all Gideon's fault. Well, Gideon's in love with Rip still, we found out last week.
Yeah,
so
that's
you missed
true.
the big kiss
I did.
between.
Yeah.
But
That was a good one, by the way.
you're right, though. I mean, maybe Gideon shouldn't have, but at the same time, Nate probably shouldn't have prodded her into going to find out.
No, and I
either.
think it's a very important, not just obviously for the characters that we care about in the course of the show, but also sort of in the larger scale of like doing a TV show. She has to go back.
Of
I mean, there's
course.
no way around it. Just as, segueing into our next point, Henry sacrifices himself to save the team, which Henry had to do. And I think Henry realizes that. So basically what happens is the Wave Rider picks up Thawne and Adam from the moon and sort of slingshots back to Earth, but they've run out of pretty much all the power on the ship. Seems like the ship runs out of power every couple of episodes, but runs out of power and sort of has to glide back down into the Earth's atmosphere. And in order to do that, they have to do a couple things with the ship. One of the things is opening a hatch door. Whoever opens that hatch door will go flying out. And Henry more than willingly says, I'm in, let's do this. Because of the history that he knows and what he knows his destiny is.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because he didn't even volunteer so much as he went without anyone knowing.
Right, like I think Rip was getting ready to.
Yeah.
Rip and Sarah were arguing over who would volunteer, and then he was already
Henry
there.
was gone, and it was this really heartbreaking moment between him and Nate because he finally gets a chance to be with his grandfather again, and here he is trying to save him, and only to watch him die.
That was a great moment,
And it was a really great moment, and of course it ends with Henry saying, tell my son I'm sorry I left him. And it's
Right.
really beautiful and really heartbreaking, but it was needed. So I was happy it happened, but I was sad.
No, I mean, it was they're both actors. And I thought the actor who played Henry, was great. And I didn't know that until this episode, even we've seen him in a couple of the episodes, because I don't think he had enough to do until tonight's episode.
Yeah.
But I thought he was great. I thought that stuff between him and Nathaniel were great. And I also loved, and I'll ask you about this, Alvin, there's sort of this like plot hole that they got in where Hank, Henry's son and Nate's father, is at NASA, and so when Nate gets back to Houston, they're able to meet. He meets a 10-year-old version of his own father. What do you think about that?
I thought that was awkward, for sure. I thought that was really awkward, but there's a reason why he was there, right? Because Commander
because Haywood had like basically
had to
fixed his essay assignment.
to have an awesome visit, Apollo 13,
Right.
which was kind of nice.
Student's visit.
And for Nate to talk to his father like it was his son it's kind of different. It's kind of a tearjerker right there.
But I think it gave those characters, let's say the Haywood family, the full circle that they really needed
Yeah.
to move forward. going into the last 3 or 4 episodes.
I would definitely agree with that. I mean, because this is clearly something that's weighed on all of them for a long time. So it almost felt like closure in a lot of ways for
And
them.
even to a degree, the stuff with Vixen. I
Yeah,
feel like that's
absolutely.
sort of getting to the closure of, we only got a couple more episodes left here, so we kind of got to get to where we're going. Another point I want to discuss before we run out of time is who's the captain now? Who's the captain now?
Sarah
is
Lance
it Rip or
all the
Sarah?
way. Sarah Lance
Well,
all the way
so
for
we
me.
have some Rip and Sarah fighting kind of over
true.
who's the captain. What do you think?
But as far as this season, Sarah, it's like when you're playing against a team, right, on any sport, that you're playing against this team and you're chosen to be a captain at that time in an event. And Sarah has been fighting the Legion of Doom now for this whole season. So for Rip to take over and he doesn't even know what's going on from beginning to end, Sarah is the rightful captain as of right now. We'll see after the season, but don't change it. They know what they're doing. They're strategizing.
I think
They have
she's
a
earned
point.
her position.
I think
and
she definitely has.
Rip
Yeah.
will become a better captain for being under Captain Sarah.
I think I completely agree with you, actually. I love their dynamic. I've always loved the dynamic between Sarah and Rip, and I think that this was a more than great way to handle this because Rip, it would have been forced had he come back and been like, this is my ship, I'm taking it back, especially because they've grown so much as characters without him.
Yeah.
So I was really happy to see him kind of step back and go, no, Sarah, you're the captain, and you're a better captain than I am.
And even Gideon still calls Sarah captain.
Yep.
And calls Rip his lover.
Yeah, well, we don't know what she calls him. They're wanting us to wrap up, but one last thing I want to talk about is honorable mention, Stein Sings.
Yes.
Stein Sing, the Harry Belafonte classic. Deo, Deo, right? What did you think? I know you loved it.
I
What'd you
loved
think?
it. This was my favorite scene in the whole episode. I loved it. It gave me some Beetlejuice vibes, which was kind of fun.
Yes.
And I loved seeing Mick kind of getting involved too.
Mick
And that
got a
was,
little bit in it, and
that
we
was
know we're
fun.
going to see some Victor Garber singing in the Supergirl Flash episode, musical episode. He's a classically trained Broadway musical actor. But what did you think about Stein singing?
Oh, it was amazing. Reddit was going nuts all over it, by the way. I was just
sure.
looking at their threads, and they were like, I love this. This is my favorite thing out of the whole episode.
And what was also great about it is that it fit organically the moment of the episode. It was funny, it was light, it kind of got us out of that heavy situation, but it also made sense to the characters.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which we love.
And if Winona Ryder was there, it would have been perfect.
If what?
If Winona Ryder was there, it would have been perfect.
There you go. That would have been it. That would have been it. Well, this is it. This is all the time we have tonight, but I want to thank you very much again for watching the Legends of Tomorrow after show right here on the stream.tv. That's a tongue twister.
It is a little bit. It happens, man.
I'm your host, Jamie Philbrick, and I want to thank Patrick Campbell.
Once again, man, thank you for having me, guys. You can find me on Twitter at PJ_Campbell. Thank you for watching.
And my good buddy, Alvin Rueda.
Good to see these guys on Tuesday, by the way. Awesome as always. And catch me at Alvin Rueda on Twitter, The Mighty Chunky on Facebook, and catch me this Monday at the Comedy Store doing my stand-up routine at 8:30 at the Comedy Store in Hollywood.
Oh, hot plug
Hot
right
plug.
there. We want to thank you guys, as always, for tuning in. We want to let you know that you can check out our Facebook pages. We have the DC TV Universe crew, as well as a Legends of Tomorrow discussion page. We want to thank our good friend Lance Osfresser, who runs all those sites for us and does a terrific job. We love
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
So thank you
Thank
so
you, Lance.
much. And thank you again for tuning in. We will see you next week. I'm your host, Jamie Philbrick, and we will see you right here next week on the stream.tv for Legends of Tomorrow After Show.